السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. First and foremost, we begin with the praise of Allah Ta'ala, how we always do with every action of ours. We send gratitude and we express our thanks unto the That and Being that has granted us the ability, first and foremost, to be here. And He has granted many, many blessings upon us. So for that, let us all say Alhamdulillah. And we also send salutations upon the noble Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who is a perfect example for all of us to follow, and he is a perfect role model for all of us to have. May Allah Ta'ala give us all the ability to live the same lifestyle that he lived. Today, as we all know, is the first session of our class. May Allah Ta'ala put barakah in it. May Allah Ta'ala grant us the ability to learn something from it, and after learning something from it, to also make amal upon it. Ameen. So the title that we have for this class is Ambassadors of Faith, Exemplifying Islamic Conduct. Now what exactly does that mean? Just briefly, going into it, it's bringing up the problems that we have today in the 21st century that we live in, the different problems that we have, how to navigate through those problems and to live an ideal Islamic lifestyle. Right? To live such a lifestyle in practical terms, how the teachings that were given to us 1400 years ago, to relate that to our day-to-day lives that we have right now. Throughout this series, we will go through various practical steps that we can start adhering towards. Why exactly do we follow Islam, right? Why Islam? Why do we believe in Allah Ta'ala as a supreme being, right? What's the point of having intellect? How far can we use our intellect? And all of these different things, inshallah, will be discussed during this series. Today's lesson and session is titled Reason and Revelation. Okay? So let's keep that in mind as the discussion proceeds and moves forward. Reason and revelation. Let's start with the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So Ibrahim alayhi salam in Surah Safat in ayat 99. He mentions, وَقَالَ إِنِّي ذَاهِبٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي سَيَهْدِينَ. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, the whole context behind this ayah, what's the shan and nuzul? Why is it that Ibrahim alayhi salam is expressing these words? So this was at a time where Ibrahim alayhi salam got extremely fed up of his people, right? He was going every single day and he kept telling them about Islam and he kept telling them about Allah Ta'ala, but his people would not budge, right? His people didn't want to listen to him. So he got to a point where he became disappointed by his people and he says, قَالَ إِنِّي ذَاهِبٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي سَيَهْدِينَ, right? I'm going to go wherever Allah Ta'ala commands me to go, right? And I'm going to do whatever Allah Ta'ala wants me to do. Inshallah, He'll guide me, right? These are the words that Ibrahim alayhi salam said, and he proceeded forward. So he started his journey with his wife, Sarah alayhi salam, and his one nephew this was the only person that believed in him, right? Lut alayhi salam. So you had these two people, and Ibrahim alayhi salam, he starts his journey, and he proceeds forward. He eventually went through different places in different countries, and he eventually ended up in Syria. Then it got to a point where the second ayah continues, and Ibrahim alayhi salam says, Rabbi habli min as-salihin. Ibrahim alayhi salam was of a very old age at this time. He had no children. So he makes this dua to Allah Ta'ala, and he says, Oh Allah, grant me such a son who is from amongst the salihin, the righteous people. Right? This was the dua that Ibrahim alayhi salam made. Then Allah Ta'ala, after a series of events took place, then Allah Ta'ala, the next ayah, He says, فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ. Then we gave him glad tidings of such a son, right? He asked for a son who was what? From amongst the salihin. Allah Ta'ala gave him a son who was from amongst halim, those who are forbearing, the ones that have patience. Right? So then the ayah continues, فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعْهُ السَّعْيَ, right? So fast forward through the story. And it got to a point where Ibrahim alayhi salam's son, Ismail alayhi salam, was now of a very strong age. By strong, I mean Mufassirin have differences of opinion as to what the exact age was. But Allah Ta'ala says, مَعَهُ السَّعْيَ. He reached such an age, now he could start walking with his father, right? A lot of you guys have kids, so you guys can relate better to this. You know, when your son reaches such an age where he could now start walking with you, right? He can do the small errands with you, go run to Home Depot with you, right? Go grab some groceries, right? He can actually be of some sort of assistance in the house. So for a father, this is a very proud moment, right? You guys could attest to that. So for a father, that's a very happy moment in life when a son reaches that age where he could assist him and he could help him. So now his son reaches this age and he says, قَالَ يَا بُنَيَّ إِنِّي أَرَى فِي الْمَنَامِ أَنِّي أَذْبَحُكَ فَانْظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. So what happens is his son reaches this age and Allah Ta'ala starts showing him a dream. And one night he shows him this dream where he sees himself sacrificing his beloved son. And in the tafsir of Qurtubi, it's mentioned that he actually saw this dream for 3 consecutive nights. Right? So now you can only imagine how serious this matter is. So he was a prophet of Allah Ta'ala, so he knew what this dream meant. So he goes up to his son and he starts telling him, right? Inni ara fil manami anni adbahuka, right? So I was sleeping last night, I saw in my dream that I was slaughtering you. Fanzur madha tara. So what do you think we should do about this? Right? So Ismail alayhi salam replied, Qala ya abatif al ma tu'mar. He said, oh my father, do whatever it is that you were commanded to do. And Mufassirin also delve into the reason as to why is it that Ibrahim alayhi salam was told through a dream. Right? There was many various forms that Allah could have told Ibrahim alayhi salam. He could have told him through the likes of an angel, right? As we see in history, Jibreel alayhi salam came and told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? He could have, told him in different ways, but he chose a dream specifically. Because a dream had so many possibilities, right? And so many interpretations that he could have made out of the dream. He could have been like, oh man, this is just a dream. This isn't anything serious, right? Allah Ta'ala doesn't really want me to sacrifice my son, right? But no, this happened 3 consecutive nights. He took the dream for what it meant, and the story moves forward. We'll come back to the story as the discussion proceeds. So what was the topic of discussion that we had? Reason and revelation, right? What's the whole point of revelation? What's the whole reasoning behind it? There's this one interesting article that was written March 11th, 1996. The author of this article was Robert Samuelson, right? He was an American economist, and he wrote an interesting article. The title of this article was The Vices of Our Virtues. Right, did we all get that? The Vices of Our Virtues. He quotes in this passage of his, right? This column of his, he says, America's glories and evils are tightly fused together. America's glories and the evils are tightly fused together. And he asserted that the progress that we make, the tool, the source that we have for our progress is also the same source and the same tool that we have for all the different corruptions that take place on this earth. So the same tool that we use to have all these different advancements in life, all these different cars and these houses and all these amazing advancements that we've made throughout history, that is the same source that causes crime, corruption, family breakdown, and all of these different vices that we see. So he says, now because these qualities are so intricately mixed, are we doomed because of this? So interesting passage. And the problem here was that he left this situation and he was happy with no answer. He just said, you know what, we're burdened, and he ends off his column with this. He says, we are burdened as well as blessed by our beliefs, right? It's just something that we have to live with, right? It's unfortunate, right? The same source that we have for all this progress it just so happens to be that this is the same source that is used for crime and corruption, right? He came so close to the truth, but he didn't really hit the truth. He didn't really hit that pinnacle where he was supposed to reach. He was extremely close, right? So close yet so far, right? The joke goes, there was this one man, he saw his boss coming in, right, to the parking lot. And the boss comes in with a really nice, brand new 2017, straight out of the lot, Mercedes-Benz. Right? So the boss, he sees that the worker is admiring his car. So he looks at his car and he says, oh, this is a nice car, ain't it? So he says, yeah, I can't help but admire how amazing of a car it is, right? And look at all the specs and everything that you have. He says, well, son, he says, work hard, right? Continue putting in extra hours and continue investing your heart and soul. And next year when you come, I'll still have a better car than you. He came so close, but he was still far from it. So this was the same thing with Robert Samuelson. He was very close to the truth, but he didn't really hit the point. Now, when we said, remember how we said the same source is used? What's that source? Since we have a small crowd, we can open it up for a bit of an interaction. What do you think is that source that causes us to have all this progress, but that same source causes all this corruption? Does anybody want to chime in with their opinion? Anyone? It can, huh? Wealth, that's a good one. Anyone else? Knowledge or intelligence? Right on the money. 10 points for you. Inshallah, there won't be any prize that will be awarded, but that's still 10 points for you, inshallah. It's our intellect, in other words. It's our intellect that has caused us to make all of this progress, but it's the same intellect that has caused us to go through various, dilemmas in life, right? So in a nutshell, it's the free use of reason and intellect that is behind America's progress and scientific and material progress. And it's the same usage of this tool, right, that people use in their religious lives. Right? Not only in their materialistic lives, but when they use the same tool in their religious lives, then this equally is a phenomenal degeneration. So that same tool that was helping us before, now we use that same tool in our religious lives, and now it has caused us to degenerate far more than we could have ever imagined. And success, right, for these different tools that we have, it's only successful within its confines, right? So now every tool has a certain application, right? So if someone, for example, tries to hear with their ears, or hear with their eyes rather, right, will we call that person foolish? Of course we will, right? And what's this person's excuse? He'll say, listen, man, I use these eyes to see, and I can see extremely well with these eyes, right? So let me just try and hear with these eyes. And he keeps saying that, oh, but it was successful in the first part. I could see with these eyes. I was successful in seeing with these eyes. And he keeps using that excuse, and he keeps using that excuse, and he tries to hear with his eyes. Will he ever get anywhere? Right? He won't get anywhere. Because even though that same tool was successful in the first area, that doesn't necessarily equate to the success that will result in a second area. So now this tool that we have of free thinking, if we don't channel it correctly, then not only will it, be of no progress, it will also be a source of harm. Right? Not only will we hit a plateau, we'll also cause undue harm to ourselves when we start using it in a place where it doesn't belong. So now, when we start talking about religious matters, right? When we start talking about Islam, right? This same tool, this free intellect, right? This freedom to think whatever you want, when it's not paired up with divine guidance, right? As wahi, we call it, right? When it's not paired up with Quran or Hadith or any of the things that Allah Ta'ala has told us, then this becomes, an extremely, extremely dangerous platform. This is why even when you go to different philosophers of today, they still have not figured out the purpose of life. You go to a specific philosopher, he'll be like, well, maybe it's happiness, right? Maybe it's self-contentment, right? Maybe it's pleasure, right? But not a single philosopher can say that, oh yes, it's a consensus across the board that this is what the purpose of life is. Right? Even though they were extremely smart individuals, there's no denying that, right? They were extremely intellectual individuals, but they used their intellect to try to reach certain heights, and their intellect had a limit. Right? They didn't use it in the confines of what it was supposed to be used at. And what happened was, the result of it was that they could not ever come to a solution. They don't know what the objective of life is, right? And in addition to all of this, it's also impossible for us to separate our feelings from our intellect, right? So now, for example, you open, right, Islam and Dini matters to everybody, right? Do whatever you want, think of however you want it to be, and that's how it is. Now you'll have every single person with a different opinion, right? Every single person will think the way they want. You know how they say crayons are just like M&Ms, right? Crayons are just like M&Ms. They taste the same no matter what color they are. Right? Crayons are just like M&Ms. They taste the same no matter what color they are. Philosophers still have not come to the consensus of what the objective of life is. Because Now, what's the purpose of mentioning all of this, right? So we've gone through, yes, there's a tool, which is the freedom of thinking. We've advanced really far with this. We've progressed so much in life with this. But if we use it in developing our moral compass, right? If we use this tool in developing our dini matters, this is where it becomes extremely, extremely dangerous. Now, let me bring an example that took place a couple centuries ago, right? There was this one great leader, right? And I don't know if we can really call him great, but there was this leader by the name of Ubaydullah Hassan Qirwani, right? Ubaydullah Hassan Qirwani. And he put forth a very, very interesting theory, right? And it might seem a bit disgusting, but just bear with me. His theory was that why is it that people get married to different people, right? Why is it that a man gets married to a total stranger, someone he doesn't even know, right? Someone he hasn't ever spent his life with, right? And now all of a sudden 20, 25, 30 years of your life go by, and now you want to get yourself married to a total stranger, right? So he said, what's the solution to this? He said the solution to this should be that every single man should get married to his sister, right? Every single man should get married to his sister. Why? Because your sister is someone that you grow up with, right? She knows all your interests and your likes and dislikes. She knows everything about you. She knows what you like to eat most, right? She spent her entire life with you. So if there's anyone that you should get married off to, it's your sister, because she knows you best. Right? And this sounds extremely disgusting, right? It just sounds hard to hear. But logically, if you look at his theory, do you have a logical answer to that? Is there any Yes, now we can start saying that, well, scientifically it's proven that, kids come out deformed. Well, this theory was passed, several centuries ago, and then they hadn't scientifically discovered that. And secondly, there are still theories that you can find today stating that incest is something that does not cause harm to the child, right? So you have both sides of the field. So you have the first answer, which is that this scientific theory just recently passed, and this theory of Ubaydullah was years ago. And also, if you say that yes, there is a scientific theory, well, there are two theories to it. There's some people that say that it does cause harm, and there's some people that say that it doesn't cause harm. So back to Ubaydullah's theory. Is there any logical answer that you could think to counter his theory? Is there any, I can open it up for discussion. I couldn't think of anything. Is there anything that you could think of? So even though it was disgusting, it's still something that makes some sort of sense, right? And how did he get to that conclusion? Well, he said, logically, this is how the situation looks, and logically, this is what the solution of the situation is. So therefore, it should be best for man to start marrying his sister, right? And now we openly reject that, even though we never had a logical answer to him. And this is why this tool that we have, a freedom to think, it can only be used in its confines, and when it tries to exceed that, that's when we put it to the side and we bring divine revelation, where Allah Ta'ala actually puts a say in it, right? And we need to have such a source in life that can inform our desires, right? That can inform our desires, and rather than being subservient to them. You know how if we tell everybody that, listen, you're open to do whatever you want, then every single person will start following their desires. They'll do whatever they want. Whatever they feel is, Islam, they'll start following Islam that way, right? Whatever interpretations of Islam that they feel they have, then they'll start doing it. The other day, I was having this discussion with a brother, and he said, Sheikh, I can't not eat food from outside, right? He said, it doesn't matter if it's halal or haram, I can't not eat the food from outside. And his reason behind it was, he said, well, listen, we've been told that we're not supposed to eat one animal, and that's pork, right? And I try my best not to eat that animal, and alhamdulillah, till this day, I have never ate pork. But, as far as, that all that extra stuff, that halal, haram stuff, yeah, it's not something that I'm comfortable doing, right? What was that, right? Logic that, okay, well, we're told that pork is something that we should abstain from, let me abstain from it. But as far as the extra stuff that doesn't really, coincide with our desires, let me kind of push that to the side. Well, that's another reason why we need superior and divine revelation. So the first point was that because our intellect has a limit, right? And this limit, it can't be exceeded. That's why we need divine revelation. Secondly, is because we'll start catering our desires if we don't have divine revelation. We'll start following whatever we want to follow. That's a second reason why we need divine revelation. And this is what all the prophets alayhimus salam came with. Right? They all claim to have access to a higher source of knowledge, which was wahi from Allah Ta'ala. Right? Those who accepted them, right? All the Sahaba, all the companions, right? They didn't just accept them, right? They used their intellect. They saw, right, that the Prophet ﷺ, what kind of character he possessed, what kind of individual he was. So they used their intellect to an extent, right? But once they saw that that extent was reached, right, that limit was reached, then they left it and they said, Sami'na wa ata'na, we believe in Allah Ta'ala. And one also extra point that needs to be noted is that the prophets, right, when they believed in Allah Ta'ala, right, and when they believed in the Quran, they didn't believe because it was proven to them, they believed because it was told to them, right? They didn't believe because it was proven to them, they started to believe because it was told to them. You know, different things that we're told not to do, interest, gambling, you know, eating pork, abstaining from zina. Logically, a lot of us can find answers to this, right? And find solutions to this. Well, it shouldn't be haram. Well, the only reason we're told not to do certain things is because Allah told us not to do them. Yes, certain things we can find the wisdoms behind it, right? Certain things like, for example, sitting down and drinking water, right? Short, small example. Recently, a study came out, and it had gone viral on Facebook, where drinking water is actually extremely beneficial for your health, right? So yes, sometimes we will find the wisdom in behind why Allah Ta'ala commands us to do certain things. But sometimes, and most times, we will not find that wisdom, right? And we just have to believe it because Allah told us to believe it, right? And we need to develop that habit to just be able to accept it because we were told that this is why Allah Ta'ala told us to do it, and now we have to do it, right? Now moving forward, coming back to the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was told to sacrifice his son Ismail alayhi salam, he didn't try to reason with Allah Ta'ala. Right? He could have found so many different excuses, right? Remember how we said in the beginning that Allah Ta'ala told him through a dream, right? There's a reason why Allah told him through a dream. Because it makes the test that more difficult. Because he could have made so many different excuses, but yet he put all of that to the side and he still believed in Allah Ta'ala, right? Sami'na wa ata'na, we believe as well as we obey in whatever Allah Ta'ala told us, right? He didn't start beating himself up, right? He listened to what Allah Ta'ala, like, you know how different airlines are beating people up? And then other airlines are saying that, you know, we beat the competitors, not the people, right? So may Allah Ta'ala make it easy for everyone that's going through a tough time. Ameen. So, in conclusion, right, of this whole entire session is that we have been given a very marvelous gift, which is we have this freedom to think and we have this intellect that Allah Ta'ala has given us. Right? And because of this, we have made so many different advancements in life, right? All this progress that we see in front of us, right? SubhanAllah, I was reading something the other day that imagine all of the kings of the past, right? They were told that there's going to be a nation that's going to come after you, and they'll be the same nation that they'll be making, you know, minimum wage, and they'll still have better lifestyles than you. How do you think the kings of that time would have felt? Right? The beds that we have right now, do you think they're, you know, harder than the beds that the kings had of, you know, say 500-600 years ago or even 1,000 years ago? The water system that we have, the mode of transportation that we have, everything is better of even the kings of the past, right? So this is all because we progressed and we advanced in life through this amazing gift that Allah had given us, which is freedom to think, our intellect. But this intellect has a limit, right? So use it within that limit, right? And that limit, if we try to exceed it, there's only harm that can come out of it, right? So may Allah Ta'ala give us all the ability to understand whatever Allah Ta'ala is commanding us to do. May Allah Ta'ala give us the ability to take benefit from the different scholars that we have in our local community and vicinity so that they can help us, you know, not for their own purpose and not for their own agendas, so that we can go onto the path closest to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Anything good that was said was from Allah Ta'ala, and anything bad what was said was from myself. May Allah Ta'ala give us all the ability to act upon whatever has been said. Inshallah, next week, we will continue this discussion, right? A bit more, right? There's still a bit more detail that is outstanding and left. And we will also now start getting into practical things that we can start doing in our life, and practical habits that we need to get rid of, and practical habits that we need to start putting into our life, especially before the month of Ramadan comes. Jazakallah khair, wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.